All right, so today we're going to kind of dive deep, into this case that really kind of grabs you by the throat, so to speak.
Right.
We're looking at this blog post about the trial of Christopher Lee, who was convicted for the murder of Aaron Corwin.
Hmm.
And it's a story with more twists and turns than, I don't know, a backwoods dirt road.
Yeah, definitely.
And it all starts with a disappearance.
That's right. Aaron Corwin was a young woman. She was dating Marine Christopher Lee, and she vanishes. No trace. Nobody, just poof, gone.
It's the kind of mystery that just sucks you right in.
Oh, absolutely.
And this blog post isn't just laying out the facts. It's giving opinions about the trial itself, especially about Christopher Lee's defense.
It's interesting because the defense strategy was bold.
Yeah.
They claimed that Aaron was the abuser.
Okay.
That she was abusing Lee's daughter.
Wow.
Now, you have to understand this kind of claim.
Yeah.
Without a body as evidence, you're really walking a tightrope legally.
I mean, it does make you wonder what the defense was thinking.
Yeah.
The blog post didn't hold back.
It didn't.
Called it audacious and far-fetched.
Uh-huh.
And when you look at the evidence...
Right.
Or the lack thereof, I mean, you can see why
Totally.
No police reports, no medical records, nothing to support any of these abuse claims.
So it raises a big question, doesn't it?
Huge.
Was this a genuine belief or was this a calculated move?
Right.
To try to sway the jury?
Totally.
When you're defending someone in a murder case.
Yeah.
Especially when there's no body creating doubt.
Oh, yeah.
Is everything.
Everything.
It's the name of the game.
Right. And sometimes that means pushing the boundaries of what's believable.
Absolutely.
The prosecution, of course, saw right through it. They systematically dismantled the defense's claims point by point.
They did, but even if the abuse claims were shaky, the defense still had one more card to play. And this is where things get really interesting, or should I say disturbing.
Okay.
I'm talking about the Garrote demonstration.
Okay, before we get into that.
Yeah.
For our listener who might not be familiar, a garrote is basically a wire or cord used for strangulation.
Right. It's brutal.
Yeah.
And it's silent, and in this case, it plays a central role.
Absolutely.
So during the trial, the prosecutor actually asked Lee to demonstrate how he allegedly killed Aaron.
Wow.
Using a garrote.
Oh, my God.
And the detail that really sent chills down everyone's spine was they used a doll.
A doll?
A human-shaped doll.
For this
demonstration. The blog post really hammered on that detail.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you demonstrate something so horrific, so intimate, using a doll?
It's wild.
It's like he's distancing himself,
Yes.
Almost detaching from the reality of what he's accused of.
And that detachment, or maybe we could call it a lack of remorse, became a key factor.
Yeah.
Witnesses said Lee showed almost no emotion. Really?
During this demonstration.
Wow.
Can you imagine being in that courtroom?
Yeah.
Watching that unfold?
I mean, chilling, especially for Aaron's family.
I can't even imagine.
To hear the man accused of murdering their daughter talk about it with such a lack of feeling.
It's heartbreaking.
It is. And, as the blog points out, this complete lack of visible remorse likely played a major role in how the jury viewed Lee.
Oh, for sure.
It just paints a picture of someone cold and calculated.
It's powerful, that insight into how perception plays out in a courtroom.
Oh, yeah.
Remorse, or the lack of it,
Yeah.
can be as impactful as any physical evidence.
Wow.
So it makes you question, was this a performance?
Right.
Or was it genuine?
Yeah.
And how can you truly judge something like that?
Oh, it's a tangled web, that's for sure.
It is.
But this case has even more layers to unravel.
Yes, it does.
Because there's another person at the edge of this mystery. Nicole Lee, Christopher Lee's wife. The blog post really dives into her potential involvement, and that's where things get even more complicated.
The blog highlights this statement that Nicole allegedly made before the trial. She said that she didn't care if Aaron was dead as long as there wasn't a body.
Wow.
Now imagine the implications of a statement like that.
I mean...
It raises questions about motive, about a potential cover-up, about her role in all of this.
Yeah, and it gets even more suspicious when you factor in the reported instructions that she gave to Chris.
Right.
She said, keep your story straight.
Keep your story straight.
If she was truly in the dark, why would she say something like that?
Right.
It suggests a level of awareness, a potential involvement that just begs for more exploration.
And yet, despite all of this, Nicole never took the stand.
Really?
The prosecution didn't call her as a witness.
Huh. That's a curious choice.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Perhaps they felt like they had enough against Christopher.
Yeah.
Without dragging her into it. Or maybe they were worried her testimony wouldn't hold up under scrutiny.
That's a possibility.
It's another piece of the puzzle we might never fully solve.
It's like trying to piece together a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing.
Right.
You have these tantalizing clues, these whispers of what might have happened, but the full picture remains frustratingly elusive.
It really does.
What do you make of the prosecution's theory on the motive? They believe that Lee killed Aaron to escape the responsibilities of fatherhood.
Right. And this is where Lee's military background, highlighted in the blog post, becomes an interesting element.
Okay.
It's not about condoning his actions.
Right.
But it's about understanding the context.
Okay.
You know, military training, especially if it involved combat, it can desensitize someone to violence.
Right.
It changes your perspective on life and death.
Wow.
In ways civilians might never grasp.
That's a really good point. The blog post's conclusion about unchecked jealousy.
Yes.
Selfishness and the lengths people will go to escape responsibility. That really hit home for me.
Yeah.
It's a sobering reminder of the darker impulses that can drive human behavior. And it makes you wonder if someone is willing to go to those lengths to avoid responsibility. What else are they capable of?
This case is about so much more than just one body. It forces us to confront these uncomfortable truths about human nature, about the complexities of relationships, about the limits of the justice system.
Yeah, and it leaves us with more questions than answers.
Absolutely.
Speaking of questions, the one that keeps circling back for me is this.
Yeah.
If they'd found Aaron's body, would it have changed everything?
Oh.
Would the trial have played out differently?
That's a great question.
Would we even be having this conversation right now?
That's a question for the ages, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, the lack of a body in a murder case throws a wrench into everything.
Really does.
It leaves room for doubt, for speculation, for alternative narratives to take root.
Let's explore that further. Let's delve into the hypothetical scenario of what might have happened if Aaron's body had been found.
Okay.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Okay, so we're back, and we're diving deeper into this case.
Yeah.
Exploring the hypothetical, like, what if they had found Aaron's body?
Right.
I mean, it's almost like we're stepping into an alternate reality here.
It is. Think about it this way. The lack of a body forced the prosecution to build their case based almost entirely on circumstance,
Right.
Lee's own words, witness testimony,
Yeah.
and just the absence of any other explanation
Right.
for Aaron's disappearance.
It's like building a house on sand.
Exactly.
It might look sturdy,
Right.
but one good storm could wash it all away.
Totally.
But a body that's like finding bedrock.
That's it.
You know, suddenly you have tangible proof,
Right.
forensic evidence, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Could have backed up or completely contradicted Lee's story.
Absolutely. The cause of death, the time of death.
Potential DNA evidence.
Yeah.
All of that could have painted a much clearer picture.
Yeah. I mean, it could have put Aaron at a specific location.
Right.
Maybe even linked a lead directly to the crime scene.
It changes the whole game.
Changes the whole game. And what about that audacious defense strategy we talked about?
Yeah.
Claiming that Aaron was the abuser. Would that have even held up if they had found her body?
It would have been much harder to sell that story to the jury.
Right.
Imagine if they had found Aaron's body showing signs of a struggle.
Okay.
Defensive wounds, maybe even injuries consistent with a garrote.
Wow.
I mean, it would have directly contradicted Lee's version of events.
Yeah.
Remember, creating doubt is one thing.
Right.
But outright contradicting physical evidence, that's a whole different ballgame.
It makes you think about the power of physical evidence.
Yeah.
We talked about how that Garrote demonstration was chilling, but seeing the actual tool used,
Right.
the actual injuries on Aaron's body, I mean,
It would have been devastating for the defense.
right, absolutely. And it raises an interesting point about the jury.
Yeah.
We know the lack of remorse that Lee displayed really had an impact on them.
It did.
But imagine if they'd also been presented with the undeniable reality of Aaron's body,
Right.
the brutal evidence of what she endured.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to imagine that that wouldn't have had a profound effect on their verdict.
I think you're right.
It makes you wonder if the outcome would have been different.
Yeah.
Would the jury have been more likely to convict if they had that tangible proof of Aaron's suffering?
It's impossible to say for sure.
Right.
But juries are human.
Yeah.
They're influenced by emotions, by what they see, by what they feel,
Of course.
and a body that brings a level of visceral reality to the courtroom that words can't always convey.
That's a good point. What about Nicole Lee?
Okay.
Do you think her role in all of this would have been any clearer if they had found Aaron's body?
That's a great question. Remember that chilling statement she allegedly made?
I do.
I don't care if she's dead, as long as there's no body.
Yeah. Right.
Now imagine if they had found Aaron's body and forensic evidence, placed it somewhere connected to Nicole.
Okay.
Or imagine if evidence emerged linking her to the disposal of the body.
She wouldn't have been able to maintain her silence?
Right. She would have been drawn directly into the heart of the investigation.
Exactly. And the prosecution's decision not to call her to the stand might have looked very different.
Very different.
Suddenly, she's not just the silent wife on the periphery.
Right.
She's a potential accomplice.
It's amazing to think how one piece of evidence,
I know.
Aaron's body, could have flipped the entire script.
It really could have.
The narratives, the strategies, the focus of the trial could have shifted dramatically.
It really underlines the complexities of the justice system.
It does.
How much can hinge on what's found, what's presented in court.
Right.
It's a reminder that the search for truth is rarely straightforward.
Very rarely.
And it underscores the importance of thorough investigation, doesn't it? Even without a body, the prosecution managed to build a case strong enough for a conviction.
They did.
You know, they relied on circumstantial evidence, witness testimony, Lee's own incriminating words and actions.
Right. But let's not forget, even with a conviction, there are still so many unanswered questions.
Oh, absolutely.
Questions that might haunt Aaron's family forever.
Like, where is Aaron?
Exactly.
Where did this all happen?
Right.
What were her final moments like?
These are questions that may never be fully answered.
Right.
And that's a tragedy in itself.
And it speaks to a deeper layer of loss.
Yeah.
Not just the loss of a life, but the loss of the truth.
It's true.
The blog post talked about the lasting impact of lies and betrayal, but what about the lasting impact of unanswered questions, of not knowing? That can be just as devastating.
It can be in its own way.
And it circles back to that idea of closure, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A conviction brings a sense of justice, but it doesn't always bring closure.
Right, especially when there are so many pieces of the puzzle still missing.
This case, even in its hypothetical form, has so many layers to unpack.
So many.
But as we move toward the end of our deep dive, I think it's important to remember one crucial thing.
What's that?
This isn't just a legal puzzle or a hypothetical exercise.
Right.
It's about real people.
Absolutely. It's about Aaron Corwin, a young woman whose life was tragically cut short.
Yeah. It's so easy to get caught up, you know, in the legal arguments, the twists and turns of the investigation, but we just can't lose sight of the human cost here.
Absolutely. This case is a stark reminder that behind every headline, every trial, every blog post, there are real people whose lives are shattered by these events.
And in Aaron's case, you know, her story's incomplete.
Right.
We don't know her full story. And because of that, it's easy for the narrative to become about the accused.
Yeah.
About the legal strategies, about the mystery itself.
It's a challenge we often face when we're dealing with cases like this. How do we honor the victim's memory while also grappling with the complexities of the crime?
Right.
How do we ensure that their story, their humanity, doesn't get lost in all the legal machinations?
Yeah. The blog post touched upon this, talking about the pain of lies and betrayal, the lasting damage that can inflict. But even beyond that, there's the pain of not knowing.
Exactly.
The lack of closure.
Yeah.
And that can be a really heavy burden to carry.
And it's a burden that's often carried by the families, the loved ones that are left behind.
Right.
They're the ones who have to live with the unanswered questions.
Yeah.
The lingering doubts, the what ifs.
And in this case, Aaron's family had to endure not only her loss, but also the public trial, the defense's attempts to portray her as an abuser.
Oh, it's awful.
The constant media attention. It's just a level of trauma that's hard to even comprehend.
It is, and it highlights another crucial aspect of this case.
Okay.
The importance of support systems. Having a strong network of family and friends, access to resources like therapy and grief counseling, those things can make a world of difference when you're dealing with such a profound loss.
We talk about seeking justice.
We do.
But sometimes justice isn't enough.
It's not.
It doesn't erase the pain. It doesn't bring back what's been lost.
That's true. And it underscores the limitations of the justice system.
Right.
It can provide accountability. It can punish wrongdoing.
Yeah.
But it can't always provide the healing, the closure that victims' families so desperately need.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into this incredibly complex and tragic case, what's the one key takeaway that you hope our listener walks away with?
I think the most important thing to remember is that this isn't just a story that we're consuming,
Right.
It's a reflection of real-life events with very real consequences.
Yeah.
It's a reminder to be aware, to be vigilant, to pay attention to the red flags in our own lives and the lives of those around us.
And to never underestimate the power of empathy and support.
Yeah.
Because sometimes those are the most powerful tools that we have when faced with tragedy and loss.
Well said. This deep dive has been heavy.
It has.
But it's a conversation we need to have.
We do.
By understanding the complexities of this case, by acknowledging the human cost, by learning from the past, we can hopefully work towards a future where these tragedies become less frequent.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a journey, but hopefully a thought-provoking one. And for our listener, remember, if you or someone you know is struggling with domestic violence or the aftermath of a tragedy, there are resources available.
Yes, there are.
Don't hesitate to reach out for help.